Greetings to all. This is Chancellor North Wales with my April 2020 build, the Tupolev Tu-4. This was a buddy build with Tony Espinosa from Mexico. He was building the same aircraft using the same Academy kit as myself. Now there's an unboxing vid for this so you can see which kit I used, going through the details and what were the extras that I used for it. The kit begins as always with the cockpit, and I have to admit the number of components in the cockpit I think exceeded and the cabin exceeded my previous 5 builds combined. So as always, taking the stuff off with side cutters, cleaning up everything, checking the fit. This is an Academy fit kit and the fit is pretty good, but there's no substitute for a lot of test fitting, sanding and everything else going through it. Again, held together with Tamiya extra thin. I tend to take the fuselage halves off early on in my projects, again for test fitting, especially of the fit of the cockpit. Cleaning it down with my favorite modeling knife. That particular knife was one that I got with a set from Aldi quite recently. They've really served me well, really nice set. After that we move here to Photo-etch. Now I bought 2 Photo-etch sets for this, and here I'm working on the seat rails. I don't have a folding tool, so I tend to use 2 blades, using them together, hold it down with one and then use the other one to flip the component up. The seat rails that go on the floor had like a return bend on them, and they were then held in place using the extra thin cyanoacrylate glue, the super glue, which tends to be my favorite modeling glue. I must admit I did use a lot of super glue in general on this, not just for holding the photo etch down, but also as a filler later on, where I used the thin cyanoacrylate. After that, once I was happy with a certain level of assembly of the cockpit, I got on with applying a base coat of Tamiya white. As the cockpits are so dark, a white coat helps things to show up a little bit more and sort of lightens them up before you apply the main cockpit colour. Also, the Tamiya acrylic provides a good base for attaching, in this case, the soundproofing material, which we'll show in an upcoming step. And there we have the soundproofing. Now that was made firstly by marking a cross-edge pattern using a ballpoint pen in a fine grid. Then spraying it tan color and then layering that up with white. So this was done on a piece of card, so I could press down really hard to get the texturing, and then building up the layers of white. If you look at the Tu-4 reference pics, the cockpit and aft compartment are lined with this soundproofing material. So I've made the stuff in the past for helicopter kits, but first time I've really made it to that extent for an aircraft. You can just see the method I'm approaching it there, building it up again in layers. With the cockpit I used a Vallejo game colour, which I thinned down, and also mixed it with flow improver, so 50% paint and 50% thinner and flow improver, and it went down in all fairness pretty well. All the paints I've used here and where I've used them are listed in the details in the materials list, so you can see how I approach this. After that, it was a case of cracking on with the resin, and there I'm working on the interiors of the turrets to extend down into the fuselage. These took a lot of test fitting, especially the component that was to go into the cockpit, where it occupies quite a lot of space in there. Now in other kits you don't see this, in other renditions of the B-52, and in the original kit this is not even there in plastic. The one to go in the front needed sanding down, fitting, and then having the its like structural ribs reinstated. But even just to fit in the fuselage, there was a lot of work of sanding, fitting and working, and because each one was made to fit, I had to also mark them with their what their locations were. but you can see they're using a file reinstating the basic shape. How visible that is, I'm not so sure. There you can see I put in the windows to go into the bulkheads on the inside. Now these aren't present in the actual kit. Didn't really make that much difference with mine, but it was something that did bug me being absent. I think if you're building this with the bomb bay doors open, this is something you need to do. So I used a bit of clear sprue, which I then sanded down and polished, and then just attached. Without it, you would just literally have a hole there. So I think this is something that needs to be done, especially if you're displaying it with the bomb bay doors open. That's using a fine polishing pad. And we move on now to, you can see the finished cockpit with the soundproofing. The main cockpit sub-assemblies, the interior elements. On the bulkhead behind the pilot seat, I added a heavy-duty fire extinguisher. There we are with the photo-etch. The worst part of the cockpit photo-etch was the controls on the flight engineer's panel. A lot of those levers got eaten up by the carpet monster, and finally we got the cockpit together, and then the fuselage halves together. The join there and fit wasn't too bad. Now I'd already put some nose weight in behind the underneath the cockpit floor, either side of the wheel well, and then I added more in the engine nacelles, sandwiching lead weights in between 4 coins in each nacelle. To really emulate the weight of the engines. I also put some coins in the engines, and I glued 4 coins either side of the forward portion of the forward bomb bay. So there's quite a lot of weight added to this model. I use air gun pellets that I'd squash with a pair of pliers and then secure in place with super glue. Normally I would secure the stuff using milliput, but in this case it really lends itself to this kind of assembly. And then just close up the engine nacelles again with good old Tamiya extra thin and clean it up. I think this model really needs the extra weight, and I don't think there's enough weight in the cockpit. You really should get the masking set for this kit, and these went on very well. A little bit unclear which is which, but once you've worked it out, just follow the instructions and they go down quite well. An absolute godsend. I normally don't spend much on kit extras, but with so much glazing, yeah, definitely worth it. And you can see it makes it so much easier. So if you're building this B29 kit, as a B29 or TU4, I strongly recommend getting the masking set. You don't have to worry about masks for the gunner's positions, apart from the tail gunner position, which comes with that, and there was also a mask for the wheel well. But for the cockpit, definitely. With the fuselage halves together and the first and some filling done, then a spray of grey along the seams to check it, and then I had to reapply some Mr. Surfacer to the joins, working that in with a brush, and then getting another sanding after that was dry. I normally leave that for 1 day to dry, and you can see under there the blisters for the radar. That came also from the photo-etch. And the fuselage, so all the main joints had this. Now I used as my basis the Tamiya Black to form the base, ahead of applying the Vallejo Metal Air Aluminium, and then I followed the black also with some tonal adjustment using white. Honestly, I don't think I should have bothered with the latter. Just a good coat of Tamiya Black and then work from there. And that way it sprays on okay. I find Tamiya and Vallejo paints, with Tamiya as the base, work well together. I would never mix the two paints together, but I do work with the two together. And then the Vallejo Metal Air Aluminium went on without any major issues. I do like that paint. I do like working with it, and I like how it sprays. Doesn't seem to give me too many problems. You have to keep the tip clean, that's for sure, because you do get a build up. But for the most part, of all the metallic paints, I seem to get on best with the Vallejo Metal Air range. I masked off the flying surfaces and then sprayed them using the Duraluminium to get a different tone. And I just, for the ease of the masking, I just use post-it notes because they're low tacky and they aren't tacky, and just made it easier to apply without fussing about too heavily with taper masking. That was it there. I must admit I wasn't happy with the tone of the engine engine cowlings, so I redid them by hand painting the aluminium, and but using not just the basic Vallejo Model Air aluminium rather than the Metal Air colours. The masks, the decals went on without any major issues. They were from a number of sources. I put the top surface red stars in about 2.5 inches too far inboard, so that's a little bit bugging me, but they are where they are. So not perfect there. They should have been further outboard, but it is what it is. The others went on okay. As I did state before, I used 1/48 scale decals to look right, added some letter numbers in. The resin barrels, I only used 4 of them from this, well, I replaced 4 of them with pins, and there you see the model finished. I applied the weathering using Tamiya weathering powders and my own oil wash. I added in the aerial using fishing line. I had a spot of bother there. I always managed to mess up something at the end, and had a bit of bother with the super glue I used to attach the wire aerials. The tail guns were, I didn't use the resin ones. Those were replaced with pins, as were the forward upper gun turrets, because they would have just broken off too easily. So gun barrels that I felt would have been vulnerable were replaced with metal pins. And then it also had some Photo-etch aerials attached. So the decaling wasn't too heavy an affair. The aerials either side of the cockpit were also from a set. If you shine a torch in the cockpit, you can pretty much see the details there. And I used light blue for the wheels. That was from the Revell paints for the wheels and for the wheelbase. I thought the undercarriage on the model was a bit fiddly, and I thought the instructions were pretty bad in terms of clarity of location of some of the components, but beyond that, if you test fit, you do get around it. And there it is with the my other Tupolev bombers on the shelf. So guys, that was quite a good project, so thank you for watching. Happy modelling. Thoroughly enjoyed the project, guys. Recommend this kit, certainly, if you want to build a Tu-4. So God bless. This is Chancellor North Wales signing out.